Hi there, I'm Myles and welcome to my channel. I've been a video blogger since 2006, in which I've experimented with the platform to see how it can be used as a vehicle for social change. Because sharing ideas, working towards bettering our world, or even just making someone out there smile, these are the things that keep me going in life. And let me tell you, it's been quite the journey. I set up the first UK YouTube gatherings to help bring online friendships into the real world, developed a way that video blogging could be used as a tool to help people with depression, put together a team to represent the YouTube community on a BBC reality TV show, and won. Used video to help hold government to account, whether in person or online.
Myles, you're raising some very big points about our civil liberties.
Worked as a video strategist for a variety of organisations, created a 24-hour non-stop live broadcast to raise money for UNICEF, and much, much more. Because video blogging has changed my life, I now have this deep desire to do what I can to help change the lives of others. And technology is such a powerful tool, but it only benefits us if we approach it with the right values. So every Thursday, I upload a new video addressing this. Value systems from the past, learning from large events that have impacted our world, value systems of the present, such as mental health and well-being, and value systems for the future, how our minds need to evolve with all the technological developments coming our way. If any of this interests you, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page to be notified about future videos. And if you'd like to support the work I do more closely, then please visit patreon.com/Myles Dyer for more information. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you around. Whew, how was that for a quick introduction? Adios, till next time.
Welcome, Myles. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Cheers.
good seeing you, man.
You're right there. You're all mic'd up, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, great, fantastic. So first off, welcome. So where do you live now?
Just outside Reading.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about that, but that's I'm sure it's are you from there? Where are you from originally?
Yeah. So I'm from Reading. I've grown up there. Yeah.
Cool.
I have to say though, because of YouTube, I have developed a transatlantic accent in some ways. Because when I used to go to the States, and also because of my videos, they say YouTube, not YouTube,
Yeah.
and I say like you as well. Do you say YouTube or YouTube?
I say YouTube,
Okay.
much to the chagrin of my daughter.
So I go between the two, and but when I go to the States, if I want a glass of water, I have to say it 5 times, so it's easy to just say, I have a glass of water, and then you're done. So some people can't really pinpoint where, but it's a global channel, so
Okay,
I think
fantastic.
American English is the most mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, is that something that you think that things like YouTube are helping to do? Are we Americanizing the world through both culture as well as even accents and things like that?
I think so. I mean, I think even with television and movie, that was the case. I remember when on a school trip in Germany, getting taken around a castle, the tour guide spoke with an American accent, and that's because where they learn from is from movies and TV, and I think that's only become exaggerated with the internet, which is even more accessible.
Okay, interesting. So I guess, for me, so you were growing up in Reading, and I guess ultimately, why did you start video blog? Was it video blogging, or were you using YouTube as the platform for your video blog, or? So
I maybe, as a kid growing up, I made silly videos by myself and that, because there was no real platform to upload to. But I was living with my parents, and I saw on the news one day this BBC News story about a man called Peter, geriatric 1927, this 80-year-old man who posted a video called First Try, introducing himself to the world, went against the nature of, or the preconceptions of old people being technophobes, and it got millions of views. So I went online and I checked it. It was great, but it wasn't just his video, it was that underneath people had posted video responses, which YouTube has now removed, unfortunately, which I feel a bit bitter about.
Why have they stopped that?
Just click-through rate is terribly poor. Just that in the early days, video responses would get a lot of views and a lot of traffic, but then people would use it to put their own videos to spam and that, and as it's a much bigger community. But yeah, so I saw all these people introducing themselves from around the world saying, this is what I do, this is what I do. Yeah. And so I did that and said, I've written a film script, started reading extracts, and I had a few people say, I like your views on the world. And it had about 20 views and maybe 3 comments, and I thought, let's do it. But the thing I've always said is that progress is something you only notice when you look over your shoulder. I didn't go into this thinking I want this to become something I do as a job.
Okay.
So
were you just killing time in a sense?
Yeah. So it was it was the latter half of a gap year where I was going to do psychology because I wanted to become a counsellor. But by the end of, I went to university. My parents were very concerned, saying, you know, you can do your YouTube stuff, but focus on your studies. And I thought I'll have a balance. But university was great, but I realised that YouTube was my way of helping people. So I did a video when I had some counselling called You Are Not Alone, which is what inspired the thing I mentioned in the piece. But I just spoke for about 20 minutes about even someone as me who may come across quite confident, still, you know, gets therapy and stuff, and it's okay to get help. And it did 100,000 views, and this was in 2008, which was quite a lot.
Okay.
And even to this day, I get letters from people who say it's changed their lives, and that's not because I'm an extraordinary person, it's just I'm someone sharing experience, and it really made me realise the importance of empathy and that the internet is a tool for closing that empathy gap. But we've still got a long way to go. We see a lot of nastiness online, and I think that's one of the challenges. But video is definitely, because it's audience-facing, because it's personal, it helps with that.
Okay, so that video, was that your first, if you will, video that went viral, that sort of got you to, some level of notoriety?
Possibly, and I think it was the one that really made me realise that this technology can change the world. There's one comment I'll never forget, and it's someone I'm friends with now who said, Myles, I take medication for depression, but since seeing this video, I've stopped taking it and I'm okay. And I know them, so they're still okay now. But that really made me question, the fact that they've been given this medication, by a doctor that was probably good reason to do it. And myself, I've been offered medication in the past, which I've not done. And of course, there's different forms of depression. I have to be very careful the way we talk about it. But in some ways, it is about societal pressures. And when people are at home and feel, even getting counselling is quite a difficult thing to do. And there's long waiting times. You have to go to that first one. You don't know what to expect. Whereas in the comfort of their own home, they have access to other people's experiences. And that's what empathy is about. It's, I've experienced this is what went right for me, this is what went wrong, and it's not uttered, but it's felt. And that's what YouTube can be good for.
Well, it's interesting because obviously I guess YouTube can allow people to share experiences that perhaps aren't normally shared widely in, say, social circumstances, and hence allowing someone that they might be suffering to connect with you. And of course, that doesn't have to just be people depressed. It could be people who might have unusual sexual preferences or just unusual interests, if you will, right? But the other weird thing about it is that, again, I'm not an expert here, but evidently, because I remember hearing it in a Macklemore song, that the YouTube comments are horrible, right? And they're notoriously horrible. And I guess that's one thing they haven't disabled, which is that, while you may not be able to have video responses, you can, I assume, do people just adopt anonymous profiles and then just troll away? Is that effectively what's happening?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem, and the way we need to deal with it. I mean, a big part of it is, especially if you think of things like Twitter, and I think YouTube's a part of it as well, is the way I see the internet is every idea, every human being is a dot, and the internet is connecting these dots together. And that's doing is it's creating clouds of ideology on an unprecedented scale. This is worldwide, and we're seeing lots of conflictions of ideology, effectively echo chambers. They collide. It causes storms, and people can get angry and defensive about the way they believe things. And if they've got 140 characters to funnel that, that anger, no wonder why people get angry. And so the reason I talk often, even though it's not very sexy and not good for search terms and value systems, is because I think a lot of the things we strive for as a society will come out of teaching value systems, critical thinking, in the way that we should listen to other people. Often we're taught in the education system that the idea of debating is to win an argument, not find common ground and to learn from others. And so I have quite a mixed range of people that watch my videos from a wide range of political persuasions, because they see me as at least being fair. Because often it's not about telling people what to think, it's telling people how to think. Okay. But the only other thing I'd say about hateful comments, and I've had my fair share in the past, had death threats and people messaging me with my personal home address and that, some pretty serious stuff, but getting thick-skinned is a part of it, but then there is, things you should be concerned of. But there was someone who posted a comment on my first video about 6 years ago, when the video was 10 years ago, and they were doing it to be ironic, but I think it's beautiful. And what he posted was, you should give up, this will never take off, knowing of what the things I've done. And so the thing I always tell people is, imagine if that was one of the first comments I ever got and I took notice.
Sure.
All of that's happened would have never been possible. And so people shouldn't be discouraged. And if there's something you're passionate about, you should run with it.
Okay, interesting. So now, I mean, we talked before that, I mean, obviously you were one of the first kind of really well-known UK YouTubers, if you will. And but that your approach to it was, very much, pretty much, I'm just saying stuff. I'm just talking about opinions, things I'm thinking about, and almost as if you were keeping an actual video blog, a daily video blog about stuff going on in your life, if you will. And I guess one thing that's changed, and it reminds me, I mean, you see this in all sorts of emerging media, where, if you will, the early pioneers, if you will, some of them go on to, also then gain a large audience, if you will. And obviously YouTube, for a lot of people, both probably at a corporate marketing level as well as at an individual blogger level, has become, like, to some extent, professionalized, right? And I guess to some extent, I mean, how have those folk gone on to build massive audiences? Because I can't imagine it was, I mean, perhaps in some cases it was by chance. They just happened to appeal to a particular segment in the market, and then their community built and built and built. But now I see, I never go to them, but I hear of these, conferences now where YouTubers will come to a hall filled with tens of thousands of typically younger folks who have become their fans, and it's like a teen concert, except it's with these YouTube folks. So I guess to some extent, I mean, how have they built those kinds of followings?
Well, on the thing about those gatherings, just for some context, the first UK YouTube gathering I set up in London, there was about 30 people turned up in Leicester Square, and the average age was 25 to 30. I was at 18, 19, thinking, I need to grow up a bit. And here I am, almost 30, and I go to these things, and everyone's like 15, and it's just the switch around is remarkable. But it's just the fact that it has become more commercialized, and there is chance, the right place at the right time, but there are best practices. Okay. So a lot of the companies I've worked for as a video strategist, and I still do now as consultancy, is maintaining integrity. But if you upload on a regular schedule, if you have the same format so people know what they're subscribing to, you condition your audience. Telling people that you upload every Thursday is one thing, but actually doing it is more powerful because it becomes a part of their weekly routine. Okay. So it's a mixture of all these things. When you have something called hub content, if it's having a high production, or just hero content I'm talking about, where you have a really big splash that is might be high production, or it's on a really big thing. But then you have hygiene content where you get search traffic, and that's about if there's something in the news. So when I do videos about news events, those are the ones that tend to do a lot better. When I'm talking more about stuff like the Just World hypothesis, why can't people accept when bad things happen? That's not going to get a lot of search, and that's going to be more about people who are familiar with what I do. So I've done videos in the past, like 10 Reasons Not to Play Candy Crush, which did 1 million views. I know how to do that, but that's not what I want to do. And I think that's an important thing as well, is to some extent it is a number at the end of the day. And if I do a video about depression and it helps just 5 people, that makes me happy, and that's what I want to do. So,
So it's a conscious choice for you to kind of to put out the content you think is important to put out versus just chasing numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm by no means saying that I've ignored best practices. Quite often I've been not taking my own advice because I just saw it as a platform just to dump my thoughts as of when. It's only now that I worked for The Guardian as a video marketing manager for 2 years, and I left them in May. And now I'm doing self-employment through Patreon subscriptions, lots of small donations, and my plan now is everything I've learned, or I've been preaching the last few years, I'm now actually going to do it, and my aim is to build my own media organisation of education in that way.
Cool. I want to come back to that, but one thing is just, I guess to some extent, is that my sense of it is that in snippets of stuff, the research that I've read is that basically younger people, whether you call them millennials or post-millennials or whatever it might be, really seem to be switching off from, in a sense, from traditional broadcast media in pretty significant numbers. And I guess I'm just kind of wondering, I mean, what is it about if you YouTube and other emerging forms of media that makes it so much more compelling than just the way we've consumed media for decades now?
Yeah. I think social media means that you can no longer be a faceless organisation. You see the best Twitter accounts are someone who's got a social media person who's showing a bit of character. The news people like the Young Turks. It's very conversational, audience-facing. And it's also the fact that video blogging is so mainstream now. It's allowed young people to know what authenticity looks like. Right. They know when people are being real. A previous speaker was talking about how, you know, the importance of trust. Absolutely true. It's a candle. If it burns out, it's really hard to rebuild again. And so I think that, yeah, authenticity. And that's in the political sphere as well. It was why Bernie Sanders did very well in the US with millennials. I think he got 80% of votes under the age of 45. And that was because people could see his track record. He was 40 years ignored mostly, being very consistent. But now people are able to piece together this digital footprint of him. It doesn't matter if you're a politician saying the right thing now. People can go, sorry, we've seen it all the way. And I actually feel sorry for those politicians because it's just that they are in that transitional period. And in many ways, I feel sorry for a lot of large media organisations now because they're having to transition and scale down. Whereas actually the ones that are going to thrive are those that are smaller. Again, it was mentioned earlier about, you know, having small companies where you're all in the same room. It gives you more autonomy and flexibility. And that's just the world we live in. I mean, you can have...
It's true, because to some extent, I mean, one of the things I talk about is that, I mean, one of the ills of the world right now is that basically every major institution has got a trust problem. You know, obviously government, big business, even, you know, doctors used to be respected. Now there's a lot of distrust about medicine and that, you know, academics, religious figures. And I guess to some extent, what you seem to be arguing to me is that YouTube can give the users, if you will, some sense of some genuine authenticity they aren't otherwise getting. And that maybe in the future, I mean, people like a Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders will just simply communicate via YouTube and just kind of...
And they know, people now growing up know they have a digital past that's going to be forever seen. So it actually creates forms of accountability. So when we look at some of the biggest issues in the world, whether it's surveillance or you know, corporations and power, you know, and we look at whistleblowers and what they do, this is the new generation of people that, yeah, they are working in institutions that they're probably trying to change from the inside. And they have conscience that they know if they go out there, there is a platform to speak with the world. I mean, Edward Snowden famously said, "I am living proof that one individual has the power to take on the world's most powerful government and win." And that is because of the internet. You know, the thing I was going to say about the media is you can have a multi-million-dollar news organisation with a particular spin on a story. They have special interests with whatever their sponsors are. They could do a story, but then you have someone who has just their camera or their iPhone and they record, let's say, the truth. I put that in brackets because truth is perceived, I understand. But if that gets taken off, you know, through social media, that actually has the upper hand. And so something I said on a video 5 years ago is, when Occupy was really taking off, was that we need to become our own journalists. And a lot of people go, it's too much effort. But now it's been enforced on us, because if any of you post on social media an article that you've seen and one of your friends goes, by the way, that's not exactly true, you should check this and get your facts right, and you check it and you think, oh yeah, maybe I should have, you'll know next time to do a bit more research. So it's been enforced on us for social credibility that we need to do our research before we post about it. So the internet, broadly speaking, and video blogging more specifically, is turning humanity into some kind of immune system where we're keeping each other in check. It's creating a more networked society.
Interesting. Okay, so I know you've recently, in some sense, relaunched your video blog and things like that.
Yeah.
And what are you going to be focusing on?
So it's around value systems. So it's just given me a bit more focus. So I'm, for the first time in about 4 years, posting weekly, and so I'm looking at world events. Some of my best videos have been, or biggest viewed videos have been ones about big stories, you know, maybe around terrorism, or there's a racist outburst on a train that causes a lot of controversy. And I sort of go in there and sort of, I don't want to say I look at it rationally as if other people don't. My perspective is like, it's about finding the root causes. Life is about breaking the cycles of societal conditioning, and just giving things for people to reflect on. But then I also do mental health and well-being, because I think it's important for the now. And then technology, I'm absolutely fascinated with futurism, because I think we're not going to recognise this world in 20 years' time because of the drastic changes. I mean, YouTube, 10 years ago, that started, and it's amazing how much has happened in that time. And we can just look at some of the impacts it's had. And again, with empathy, like when the Fukushima disaster happened in March 2012, I think it was, there were people posting videos straight away of the disaster happening. And there were people in America getting ready to buy the new iPad 2. And they saw this footage and they thought, that could have been me. It really crushed this out of sight, out of mind mentality. And so they donated their money to them instead. People they wouldn't have cared about the day before, perhaps won't even see where the money goes, but they felt compelled to do it. In another way, when we go to war with another country now, it's not with strangers from afar, it's probably people that you know, that you're friends with. And so this networking, this closing of the empathy gap, it's got a long way to go. But I think, and it's why I talk about value systems, is it doesn't matter what we perceive as moral justice, if we don't talk about critical thinking, that immune system's not going to work, because people will be ideologically driven of what morality is, whereas if we think about critical thinking, hopefully we'll all move in the same direction.
Okay, interesting. So one of the things you mentioned before when we just at the lunch break is that you decided that you're going to actually be posting your stuff now primarily to Facebook instead of YouTube. Is that right?
So I post to YouTube and Facebook, but what I found is because I have this the legacy issue, I've been on there for 10 years. About 4 years ago, as I became more and more of an activist, I was sort of losing an audience and growing a new one. And when you've built something for about 5-6 years, you don't want to let go of it. And I had this real insecurity of like, I can't let go of this and not really run towards the future with this new one. And so I sort of went into this moment of stasis. But I've sort of worked for a lot of companies, learned a lot from that. And so I'm giving it another go. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to really go for it. And so on YouTube, every time I post a video, I'm losing subscribers. But it's a net loss of subscribers. I'm gaining new ones as well. But that's going down over time, and I realise I need to stick at it. Whereas on Facebook, where it's a new platform I'm using, that's doing really well. But it's because platforms have different purposes. So I'd say YouTube is a platform for building an audience with subscribers. And if you make regular content, you can really build a loyal following. Whereas Facebook is more about reach. It's about, that's where people share straight away with their friends and family. And so when I do something political on there, people go, that speaks for me. You click share with your friends and it carries on the conversation there. And so I find that Facebook has been a lot better to me now for building reach and getting exposure, but YouTube still has more of a core audience.
Okay, well I guess it's different for you because obviously you have this long tail, if you will, on YouTube of 10 years of YouTube and having an audience there. If you were starting today, would you likely just go ahead and put most of your effort on Facebook? Not to put you in a difficult position.
No. For me, it's about what content you do. Because, when I first started, I just did one video. And most people don't, if you're a video blogger, you don't go on going, I've got this new plan of, once a month for the next, or forever, as it normally is. You'd normally do one video and, put it on Facebook because that's where your friends will share straight away. With YouTube, you need subscribers or people that have got YouTube accounts to do it. But so I definitely go on Facebook, but I still think there's a lot of value in YouTube. In terms of audience retention, recently it was found that Facebook were conflating the stats of their viewerships, which I think was obvious for quite a while now, and I understand why they did it. Whereas YouTube, when you look at the stats of audience retention and how far people get, a lot of people go to YouTube for long-form content, whereas Facebook, you're scrolling down the autoplay videos and you're thinking, I might check that, or I might come back to it later, or watch it without audio and just having the text. Whereas YouTube, you go there to watch video.
Interesting. Okay. So one of the things I wanted, you talked about, I guess, your fascination with the future and things like that, and you're absolutely right. I guess winding back the clock. How old is YouTube? Is it 10 years? 2005
it started.
So it's 11 years old now, right?
Yeah.
So literally 12 years ago, it didn't exist at all.
Yeah. I know Robert Llewellyn, who did Scrap Heat Challenge, and he's in Red Dwarf and that, and he does a series called Fully Charged, which is about renewable energy. And he told me this amazing story of how when he did it before YouTube, it was the time where you had to pay for storage for your videos, and he said he uploaded this video and it did really well, and his mate gave him a call and said it's cost us this much. So the more successful your video was, the more out of pocket you were. And so he talked about how you didn't want videos to be successful. So I've always said, I've not been able to make a living fully out of YouTube, but I've always said that the priceless experience it's given me to go around the world, develop as a person, live in this amazing world. Those are priceless, and so for me, that's the riches in life that I've and it's allowed me to get jobs in these new industries.
Oh, cool. So, I guess my next question is kind of like, in 12 years, I mean, I realize, you know,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
sort of future gazing is
Where's
always...
the world going to be after Trump gets elected?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of nervous laughter there.
No, but
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what is the media? So let's start. I mean, we had a talk with Ian from the BBC and things like that. In 12 years, is there a license fee funded major UK broadcaster that, you know, that is roughly dissimilar to what it is today, or has that been? Because at some point, obviously, these people that are spending all their time on YouTube and Facebook and now Snapchat and other forms of new media, you know, they start to become adults who, you know, would normally have been watching EastEnders, regularly and things like that, and now they're not because they're watching other things. And at some point, I guess the question does become, I don't know if this is the kind of thing that you guys talk about.
One of the, I think the things that's definitely happened in the last 10 years is the commissioning model has changed with content. So before, you know, you would pitch an idea and they go, we'll run with it and see how it goes. And if it does well, we'll do another series. In terms of news, you might publish their articles, and then if it does well, you keep going. Mm-hmm. Now, organisations have the luxury of sitting back and looking, and once you've uploaded online and you've got an audience, they then can come to you. And the way I've always seen it is there was many years ago, in the early days of YouTube, there was this thing of like, you know, things like, you know, the BBC, Sky, all these organisations, and you have YouTubers. Is YouTube going to defeat television? I thought it's not. They're going to come together. BBC, Sky, all these have the resources, you know, they have decades of experience knowing the platforms. YouTubers know the new media, but they need the infrastructure, and there's a trade-off that's been happening. And I think there's still trading going on, but I've always seen it as a coming together as opposed to one
dominating.
Yeah.
Okay. Myles, unfortunately, we've run out of time. But thank you so much for spending time with us and giving us some insights into what's happening today and what might be going on in the future.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
So much.
Cheers, man. Thanks a lot. Cheers.